Hi everyone, Ryan here from Fight Game Analysis, and today we are going to be talking about the upcoming fight between Uriah Hall and Sean Strickland. If you've been enjoying the content, please go ahead and click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate your support. Alright, so we've got a fight coming up this Saturday between Uriah Hall and Sean Strickland. Let me start a little bit talking about Uriah Hall. Man, he is an interesting character. I got introduced to Uriah Hall the same time as a lot of people, back when he was on The Ultimate Fighter. And at that time, he seemed like an incredible prospect. I mean, he had it all. He was explosive. He was fast. He had a wide variety of punches, creative offensive artillery that he was bringing to the table. He had a highlight reel knockout with that spinning KO kick that just absolutely silenced the room. I mean, on the one hand, people wanted to congratulate dude for the just tremendous performance. On the other hand, I mean, that was the type of knockout that people were legitimately worried about his opponent's health. There was that kind of back and forth, like, ooh, do I congratulate him? Do I not get too loud? Do I say, great job? But do I keep my emotions a little bit subdued until we know that this guy's all right? It was one of those moments. Chael Sonnen was one of the coaches for The Ultimate Fighter that season, and I remember him having a conversation with Uriah Hall, and he said, look, I've been competing in this division for years. You are talented right now. You are talented enough to go out and be a competitor. You are talented enough to compete in the top 10 of the division. So the hype was out of control pretty much surrounding Uriah Hall at that point. Now, shortly thereafter, he loses in the finale to Kelvin Gastelum. And I think that was important for two reasons. Number one, I think we all underestimated what Kelvin Gastelum brought to the table. When we originally saw him in The Ultimate Fighter, I know that I didn't, and I don't think there was a lot of people that thought that he was going to have the type of career that he's had up until this point. And who knows what else he's going to continue to accomplish. Kelvin Gastelum is highly talented. I think he was underrated at the time. Number two, I think it was a little bit foreshadowing of what we were going to come to see from Uriah Hall. Since then, Uriah Hall's 36 years old now, which is a little bit surprising thinking about that, how much time has passed. But since then, what we come to see from Uriah Hall is that he's still that same guy. He's still the same guy that we knew from The Ultimate Fighter. And what I mean by that is he's still incredibly talented. He's still incredibly explosive. He's got the creative offense. He's got everything that you're looking for. Particularly, I'm a huge fan of the jab. He's got a great jab. He's got great low kicks when he wants to use them. Going to the calf or going to the thigh. He's got an awesome right hand when he wants to come over the top with it, when he wants to shoot it straight in combinations. He punches good in combinations. He moves around well and he's light on his feet. He's defensively sound. He's defensively responsible. He's not some kind of defensive wizard or guru, but he's defensively responsible. He can fight going forward. He can fight going backwards. There's a lot of things that he can do. And we saw all that then. We see all of it now. But he's also the same guy in the sense that he doesn't always show up. Dana White has been very critical of him in the past, particularly or most recently after his fight with Anderson Silva. When he came out, he said, look, man, Anderson Silva is done. If he would have been in there fighting anybody other than Uriah Hall, a man who is incredibly gun-shy, a man who just does not go out there and pull the trigger, if he'd been fighting anybody else, it would have been a bad night for Anderson Silva. The only reason that he was able to stay around as long as he was because of the man Uriah Hall is. So that's pretty critical. When your boss comes out and says that of you, that's pretty harsh words. But I understand where he's coming from with that. And it's because when you look at Uriah Hall, when you imagine, when you picture what he's able to do, when you see what he does in flashes and you think about him being able to put that all together for an extended period of time, it's easy to then come out and look at his performance and be underwhelmed. But is that fair? Is it right to be critical of a guy because he's not living up to our highest expectations? I like a lot of what he brings to the octagon. But we also have to recognize the weaknesses he's got and some of the flaws. The biggest flaw that he has, I think, is highlighted most glaringly in the two fights with Paulo Costa and the fight right after that with Bevin Lewis. How did Paulo Costa beat Uriah Hall? Basically, it was the pressure. It was the pressure that broke Uriah Hall. He had him backing up the whole time. He had just an incredible amount of pressure, stayed in his face, eventually broke him down, was able to land those big power shots, got him out of there. Bevin Lewis, very next fight. When Bevin Lewis first came out, man, first fight, I'm sure he had anxiety through the roof under the bright lights of the UFC. You're going out there against a namer like Uriah Hall. He came out on fire. And for like the first 2.5, 3 minutes, I mean, he was hitting Uriah Hall with some tremendous shots. I think he racked up like a 15 or a 16-0 punch count on the guy. I mean, he was beating him all over the octagon. He was hitting him with every punch that you could imagine. Uriah Hall was completely out of his game, completely caught off guard. And the similarity between that fight and Paulo Costa was the pressure. Uriah Hall doesn't handle pressure well. When Uriah Hall's at his best, he's coming forward. He can fight going backwards, don't get me wrong, but it's not pretty. He can only fight going backwards at a serviceable level. Now, he knows how to counterpunch better than serviceable. But his counterpunching, again, I'll look at that fight with Bevan Lewis. He got a counterpunch to eventually get that shot to get him out of there with that right hand. But it wasn't a counterpunch where he was moving backwards or setting traps, trying to draw him in. His feet were planted. Lewis overextended. Uriah Hall just leaned back, bam, and caught him over the top with the right hand. Got him out of there. Great shot. But ultimately, he is at his best when he's coming forward. He needs to come forward to be really, truly effective. Now, on the other side, standing across from him, Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland is an interesting character. Fought down at 170 for a little bit. Now he's up at 185. At the time, he said that he thought he was too small for the middleweights at 185. Personally, I think he's good to go. He's got a frame that fills out well. He's only 30 years old now, and he's really in his physical prime. And I think he looks good for the weight. I think he looks impressive. First of all, he's primarily boxing based. Primarily likes to strike, really for the most part. That's what you're going to see him going out there doing. When he wants to do his thing, he's going to be striking. He's going to be throwing his hands around. And we've seen him progress since he's been in the octagon, just over his last few fights. And I really like what he's putting together now. I really like what he shows up with. I look at that fight. I started doing the handicapping on some of his past fights going into this one. And the first one that I really keyed in on was his fight with Talib. He came out there and he was like possessed. He was just going forward. Talib had no problem allowing him to come forward. So it was this great dynamic of the matador and the bull, right? The pursuer and the man who's being pursued. Strickland constantly wanted to come forward and land his shots. Talib was constantly moving, constantly circling, constantly trying to maintain the distance that he wanted while Strickland was being the aggressor. And it pointed out a couple things. Number one, Strickland is going to be the aggressor. That's what he likes to do in his fights. He can fight going backwards, and he showed that in fights after that, but he likes to come forward. He likes to put his man on his heels and make him uncomfortable and land his shots, and he's good at it. He's really good with straight punches. He's got a good jab. He's got a good right hand. Puts together some combinations well. He's got good timing. Knows how to punch going forward, knows how to punch going backwards. He showed all that in that fight. He also showed that he stands up pretty straight. Also showed that he doesn't have much head movement. Also showed that if his defensive responsibility, his defensive maneuvers and positions, he tries to block and parry a lot of shots with his hands, tries to lean back from things when he can. But other than that, man, he is there to be caught. And even though he ended up getting a big win in that one, Talib caught him with some big shots. Next fight going out against Jack Marshman, we saw the same thing. He's going out there. He's pressing. He's making it happen. He's got Marshman on his back foot. He's landing big shots. But when Marshman set his feet, when he picked his spots, when he timed shots, man, Strickland was there to be caught. He was there, and he got caught with some big ones. The fight after that, which was an interesting one against Allen, when he went out there against Brendan Allen said, I'm going to be the man who's bringing the firepower to the table. I'm going to be the aggressor. I'm going forward. Strickland allowed that to happen, and that's where I really saw that Strickland knows how to fight going backwards. He was going backwards for large portions of that fight until he got Allen out of there, and he was still landing big shots. He was still landing his right hand. At times, he was switching it up and going forward and landing his shots. He looked really good in that fight against a man who was very talented also as a striker, who was motivated, who was coming forward, who was eating the best shots that Strickland had, because Strickland has some power. He's hurt a lot of guys with punches, and he was landing some hard shots on Allen. Man, Allen was taking him coming forward and continuing to answer with some of his own. And I think that fight, winning that fight, particularly the way that he did, was a big growth point for Sean Strickland. Right. So I mentioned earlier he's only 30 years old now. He goes into that fight now. Imagine this. As a fighter, you're going to have points in your career where you have to have a lot of growth. People really pull it out of you. They test you, and you're either going to show up or you're not. You're going to bring what it takes, and you're going to win, or you're not. Brendan Allen, I think that fight was one of those, not huge at the highest level, but to a certain degree. And the reason for that is Sean Strickland was landing big shots. He was at a point in his career where he was getting a lot of guys out of there. I'm sure he was hurting a lot of guys in sparring. He was being pretty impressive. He goes out there against Allen. He starts getting backed up, but he's still landing big shots, and it's not phasing Allen at all. Allen's still coming forward. He's still landing shots of his own, and it's continuing. And usually most of those shots that Strickland was landing, those are the shots that get guys out of there, but they couldn't get Allen out of there. And I don't care what anybody says. When you're relatively young in your career and you've got guys out of there in the past, and now you land those same shots and they don't get guys out of there, you start to immediately have an inner dialogue. You start to have an inner conversation. How long is this guy going to stick around? How tough is he? Do I need to start ramping down my pace a little bit to worry about my cardio because this guy's not going anywhere? If he's landing big shots of his own, maybe you start to wonder how long you can be around, how many shots of his you can take. So you start to have all these questions. And then in this dogfight, when it's grinding out, when you're getting hurt, all of a sudden you just continue on with the game plan and he peels off that right hand, hurts him, comes back with the left hook, and just explodes and gets him out of there against the cage. And you look at his reaction, the yell that he had after that, just the outburst. You could tell that was a big moment for him in his growth. Man, like, I was impressed. And then he came out in his next fight after the game and looked even better. So I'm high on Sean Strickland right now. I think the man looks really good. I think he's progressing in his career in the right way. And when these two step in the octagon against each other on Saturday night, I think Sean Strickland's going to come out with the win. As talented as Uriah Hall is, and believe me, he's very talented, he's going to land some shots. He's going to get that jab off because Strickland isn't defensively sound. When Uriah Hall starts circling, moving in the small circles, working his jab, being quick, being light, he's going to get off on Strickland. He's going to land some right hands. He's going to land some low kicks. Like, those things are going to be there because Sean Strickland allows them. I mean, that's just his style. He allows them to be there. It's almost like I hate to say that he doesn't care. I hate to say that he's not worried about it. But you can tell that he doesn't put the effort into his defense that he does into his offense. So those shots are going to land. But ultimately, I think the difference is going to be the pressure. When Strickland comes forward, when he applies that pressure, when he starts working those long punches, those long straight jabs, those long right hands, when he starts putting Uriah Hall on his back foot, once Uriah Hall becomes uncomfortable, when he starts having to circle a whole bunch, I think that's when we're going to see it come through. I think Strickland, man, he's got some fight in him. He wants to go out there. He wants to get it done. He's an aggressive guy. Doesn't seem too interested in winning all points when he goes into his fights. He goes in there. He cranks up the pressure. He makes it happen. He can land some big shots. So I like him in this one. I think he's going to come out with the win. I think he will put Uriah Hall's winning streak to an end. But let me know what you guys think. Is that how you think it's going to end up? Or do you think Uriah Hall is going to be able to, turn this one around, stop the winning streak of Strickland, and put himself back on the map at 36 years old? And who knows? Is he going to be able to put together a few impressive ones and possibly get to a title shot? Let me know what you guys think.